Okay, we're all up.
Hello, just made it in.
Hello, Larry. I was going to ask you if you wanted to change your name, but you just did. Well, since the live stream has started, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to formally call to order the meeting of the Health and Human Services Board for January 28th, 2021. Welcome to the new year. And welcome to everybody who's watching on the county's YouTube channel. I'm going to go ahead and call the roll. Supervisor Larry Bjork. Here. Bonnie Barker.
Here.
Jody Griffiths-Cromrie.
Here.
Mr. Lamb is not with us yet. Sarah Kennedy.
Here.
Sarah Schaefer is not with us. Gary Steen.
Here.
And Chairman Bartlett.
Here.
Good. We do have a public hearing today regarding a proposed application for a community development block grant CDBG coronavirus funds. So I'm going to go ahead without objection. Mr. Lamb has joined us, let the record show. I'm going to go ahead and call the public hearing to order and turn this over. First, let's suggest that the meeting has been properly noticed and people have been invited to submit testimony or to speak today. So I'm going to turn this over to Chris Corpola to remind us the purpose of the public hearing and to walk us through the agenda. Chris, if you don't mind.
So all of the items that I'm about to discuss are in the agenda, but I'm just going to tell it to you in a more narrative fashion so that you can kind of grasp the flow of the reason for us having a public hearing today. And then this will actually feed into some of the requirements that we need to address in the Health and Human Services Board meeting. About the middle of October, the Department of Administration, Wisconsin Department of Administration, let out grant intent to apply information. They divvied it out. They had received federal community development block grant money, specifically related to coronavirus. And they let the money out, divvied out by regional planning districts. So we are the Central Wisconsin Regional Planning District. Each regional planning area received between $2 and $3 million to, each district received $2 or $3 million, between $2 and $3 million to receive requests of intent to apply. So that's the process that the CDBG Community Development Block Grant uses. Is first you do an intent to apply, and then they vet those applications, and then if you pass that piece of it, then they ask you to actually submit a formal intent or a formal application. And so Chief Atkinson from the Menominee Police Department, Sarah Benedict from the Criminal Justice Collaborating Council, and I met together and tried to think. So the money needed to be used for COVID prevention, mitigation, or dealing with the aftermath of COVID. And so we tried to, and there were a number of categories that were laid out that you could look at. They were looking for large projects because there is a 13% administrative ability to claim administrative costs. So whatever it takes you to administer the grant, but it wouldn't, there's a lot of hoops to jump through, which is why we're meeting, part of why we're meeting tonight. And it would not make much sense to apply for a $10,000 grant to get 13% of that for administrative cost and still have to jump through the multiple requirements in order to obtain the grant. So they were looking for large projects. And so the three of us met and tried to brainstorm as to what we thought might be a way to meet some immediate needs within our community, as well as to meet to further some causes that we had already addressed and been working on through our work in the CJCC. And so we submitted our intent to apply for about $750,000 for a number of different projects. And then we received notice in December that we had been invited to apply for about $350,000 of that. 339,000, actually, I misspeak. So we were approved to apply for $100,000 of emergency shelter money. So this is money that we can use to do non-congregate sheltering of homeless individuals. $50,000 of case management funds and $150,000 of transitional housing monies, and then $39,000 of administrative costs. And so we have been, the department administration on the housing end of things has been wonderful to deal with. I have a great contact person there who is timely in getting back and answering questions and really being helpful in trying to ferret out what we might actually be able to do with this money. Our intent to apply didn't require a lot of actual detail to it. So once we received the information that we were able to apply, and the money has been set aside for us. So as long as we are successful in jumping through all of the pieces and requirements, the money is ours to collect. And so one of those requirements is that we hold a public hearing to obtain public input into our potential plan. And so our current plan, when we are currently in the process of writing the actual grant application itself. And our current plan is threefold. We did ask for permission to shift monies within the categories for which we were approved, and we were given that permission. So our current plan is to continue to designate $100,000 of that money towards emergency sheltering, and we would pass that money through to stepping stones since they already have the pieces in place to be able to people already know to go there if they're experiencing homelessness. And so actually what will happen is we will reimburse them for their expenses related to non-congregate sheltering in the hotels. And then we're actually going to our application would include moving $50,000 of the transitional housing money to the case management pot, making that $100,000, because we recognize that there's two things that are happening. One, Stepping Stones is being overwhelmed with need of people who are in need of housing. And secondly, one of the key pieces that we've identified as missing in our community is a strong case management piece to address why people have housing instability. So there's some reasons that are logical, like there's not enough quality or affordable and safe housing available. But there are other reasons why people have obstacles to obtaining housing security. They might have a criminal history, they might have a drug history, they might have substance use issues or mental health problems. They might have an eviction history. And so one of the things that we know from our work that we have looked at from a broader community's perspective is that we have a need to be able to connect people to a case management function who can help them, someone who can help them begin to eliminate those obstacles to permanent housing. And so we need to spend the money before the grants will be awarded and in our hands in April. And we need to spend the money by the end of the year in 2022. So we'll have about 19 months of being able to fund a full-time case management position. And the goal would be that essentially stepping stones would temporarily shelter people in a non-congregate setting, and then the case manager would immediately pick up the kind of the ball at that point in time and begin to work with people towards getting them into more permanent housing, or at least more stable housing. And we would use the remaining $100,000, not including the administrative costs, to eliminate some of the financial obstacles to obtaining that housing. So paying a first month's rent and a security deposit, or whatever that might look like. The grant does only allow you to cover those costs for up to 6 months. And so it's not a long-term solution, but our hope would be that we would be able to serve a group of individuals sort of 6 months at a time with those case management and financial resources, in an attempt to move them out of the housing instability category and into a more stable housing arrangement. So that is our intended plan at this point in time. As I indicated, we're in the process of writing the actual grant application. It's due at the end of February. And we will address a couple of the other requirements in our regular Health and Human Services Board meeting. But it is a very timely meeting of need. The one last thing that I would say about this, and I meant to go back to find the exact numbers, but stepping stones, we had to run some comparable numbers from 2019 and 2020. And in 2019, I don't remember the exact numbers, so these are very rough estimates, but the multiplication of them is accurate. So stepping stones housed, say, 40 adults and 25 children in hotel housing for a total of about 175 nights. And in 2020, they housed almost 150 adults and 50 children for 1,700 nights. So what's happened is that a year ago in 2019, they were able to move people out of hotel housing and into a more stable housing situation in 1, 2, 3, 5 days. And now people are staying a month. They leave, and then they immediately go back on a wait list to get back in, because there is such a lack of affordable and safe housing in Menominee. And so the need definitely exists, and we are pleased to be able to help to meet some of that need. Any questions about that?
Supervisor Steen.
Yeah, Chris, other than this hearing tonight, is there any action that has to be taken by our board at this time?
Yes, you
Yes.
have 2 action items when we get to that point in the Health and Human Services meeting. One is the actual approval of our submitting the application, and the other is approval of our citizen participation plan, which is essentially this type of meeting which invites people to come forward and offer their ideas or input if they would choose to do so.
And it is my understanding that we have had no written comments nor any application from the public to speak here this afternoon. Supervisor Cromer, you had your hand up.
Are there any obstacles into getting the application submitted on time?
No, thankfully the timing will all work out great. Some of the pieces of what was required we had in place already. So you need to have, for instance, you need to have a fair housing ordinance. That's been in place in Dunn County since the mid 80s, early 90s. You had to have a anti-displacement resolution. So you have to be not like bulldozing down low-income housing to build more housing kind of thing. We've had that in place for many years, since like the mid 90s. And then the other things, so there is a resolution that's coming through Judiciary and Law, and will come to the county board in February that's
February.
coming through related to you have to have in place, your law enforcement agencies have to have non-use of excessive force policy, and they have to have that by state statute anyway. So the resolution, there's a little work tweaking of the language that's happening after the Judiciary and Law meeting, but essentially the language just says that the law enforcement agencies will follow state law. And that has to be in place. And then the two resolutions that will come to you tonight have to be in place. And then the rest of them are just signing of assurances and application by your, like by Chair Bartlett and those types of things. So the timing was excellent. We were able to get all those things through the committees, and they will come to the county board in mid-February.
And the two items that are action items on our agenda tonight will go to the county board on the 17th. So that of February, that works out in terms of timing very nicely. Any other questions or comments? Chairman Bartlett.
Who is going to be doing the case management? Will that be subletted out to somebody also?
It is at this point in time. It looks like it will be Westcap. So Westcap has a person who used to be a realtor who has that ability to speak the language of landlords and people who own property. And she has been a good developer for them of those kinds of arrangements that allow people to move into housing who might have some obstacles. And they have the capacity. So they are bringing on a case manager anyway for a different set of grants. So bringing on two will allow them to do some shared training, and it also allows the case manager to tap into the collective brain trust of all of the other Westcap programs, which are the point where people leave Stepping Stones and move on to Westcap funding or programs. So it just was a really natural fit. And the organizations, Stepping Stones, us, the city, and Westcap, we've had some great meetings and brainstorming. It's a good working relationship.
Other comments or questions for Chris? Okay, then without objection, I will adjourn the public hearing and we'll move back to our regular agenda. Should we receive any comments in writing or otherwise, we will pass them on. All right, approval of the meeting minutes for November 19, 2020. Supervisor Steen, do I have a second? Supervisor Cromery, any additions or corrections? Was I hearing a correction? I guess I'm just hearing a squeak in my headphones. All in favor of approving the minutes for November 19th, 2020, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes for November 19th pass. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 25th, again, the fourth Thursday. Anybody have issues or problems with that date? If not, put it in your calendar and we'll see you again in February. Moving along then to Veteran Services, Mr. Quinn. It's all yours.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'll start off with the monthly report items of interest, not to read the document to you, but just kind of hit a couple of the highlights that I think are worth emphasizing. So locally, kind of the trend where Chris was talking a bit about some of the homeless related issues kind of going on. We actually haven't seen much of an uptick yet. It's kind of come in spurts as far as that, and I think one of my monthly impact statements is regarding a homeless veteran that was experiencing suicidal ideation that we had assisted with resolving. So things are okay in as far as the veteran homeless population, and there are some valuable resources that we're partnering with. So I don't see any any concerns at this point, but it's good to know that there's going to be some other community resources in the event that we may run into some challenges. On the state level, one addition, and I did not have this in my report, is the state of Wisconsin had added an additional enhancement to their education program, their Wisconsin GI Bill. So they've now brought on some of the private schools that are a member of a certain private school organization within the state. That acronym escapes me right now, but I do know because I've assisted one veteran to help his dependent go to Viterbo College. And so it's more of like a stipend, and the university agrees and will work with the state on that. So that's an additional enhancement on the state's level. A really big win for our Vietnam veterans and that was exposed to herbicides or defoliants, best known as Agent Orange, with the National Defense Authorization that was approved for fiscal year 2021. It's kind of been a long time coming, adding Parkinsonism as well as bladder cancer and hypothyroidism as a presumptive disease. Lots of research. There's many more diseases that also show up in research that should be added. However, it's kind of a slow roll, and this is a huge win. I've got a number of appeals. One I just presented in November. That's a Vietnam veteran that has bladder cancer. So I'll be watching that closely to see how fast that they do that. Gary, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I got a question, Greg. Is this this addition of these things, is that going to be retroactive, or is it going to be from this point forward?
I can only go off of experience with how the VA has done other conditions that they've added on. They have went retroactive. An example of another big win for our Vietnam veterans was the Blue Water Navy Act that was passed this last year as well. We've had a couple claims that retroactively were over $100,000 for some veterans in the community. So I anticipate them using the same procedures, and that is why in our office, I have presented appeals for bladder cancer because the research supports it, and now Congress supports it. So therefore, there should be some nice retroactive payments for our veterans, further recognizing the poisonings that had taken place. So that's a big thing. I'll have some more to report once they determine their procedures on how they're going to roll that out. Another point of interest that I think is I'm going to call it a COVID benefit. So the VA is allowing virtual hearings with their veterans law judges. That prior to this, I wouldn't have to go. Our office chooses to be there to represent our veterans and not rely upon just solely the service organizations that are out of Milwaukee, because they don't know our veterans and haven't put the claim together. And so our commitment has been to be there by the veterans' side. This virtual hearing option that has been a result of COVID allows us, and we set our office, one of our meeting rooms up front, to have the webcam in a secure area so that we're able to sit with the veterans. They can come here because, again, we don't all have high-speed fiber internet out in rural Knapp or Upper Ridgeland. So it really makes a big difference. So we can have our veterans represented in the best possible way. So that's a huge benefit as a result of COVID, if we want to look on an upside. Financial, we're at the year end, of course. We got a few other things to get finished up with our budget, waiting on a couple invoices to come in. But just to let the Human Services Board know, we'll be bringing forward in February a carry forward request. It's already been packaged up, sent to Keith Stry, the CFO, for review. That total amount, we've got $4,800 that's been donated for the Veterans Eternal Flame Memorial Project, and then $832 that's coming for some medical equipment funds that'll be carried forward. And then on the emergency preparedness, I just want to emphasize my opinion representing the population I represent. I think that the building access has been a positive for our veterans and their dependents being able to, with appointments, just being able to come back. Medical equipment, it's been a big improvement. Observations of the public that have been coming in are following all of the COVID guidelines and the procedures. And I have placed that forward that I would like to see that continue. I mentioned that in one of our managers meetings, and I think that'll be taken into consideration. I offered up if there's any other further rationale or anything needed from me, I can certainly provide that. But it has the customer service and the access for the public, I think has been appropriate. And so I just wanted to emphasize that. Otherwise, it's business as usual, still meeting with veterans and dependents, and it has been, again, appointment only, very few sporadic walk-ins, but that's going to happen. Any questions kind of about the narrative that's been presented forward before I go to the Veteran Serve report with the impact statements? Okay, thank you. Our veteran service, basically our contact lists for the year. What I think I'm going to need to present to you guys is grab our 2019 to do an annual comparison. So that'll be a note that I'll make because numbers look nice, but it's better to have a comparison to just kind of see if everything's been moving as we'd expect. So I'll have that available for our next meeting. Our impact statement, and my emphasis on this and the reason to present this to the Human Services Board is just to show the efforts that are being made, the people that are being directly impacted out, our constituents, or those folks out in the county, so we know what's happening and how much of a benefit it is for them and what we can offer them. First one, another situation of an excellent partnership and collaboration with our human services staff, being able to access them. I think, well, I say access, but it's actually the access worker was able to come right over to our office. We had a gentleman that's homeless, suicidal ideation, very emotional, and to be able to have that resource on site and for us to access, we can move forward on it and handle it. We're trained in handling crisis. We have to with our job, but to further have that expert that knows all the other resources and processes to bring them over was excellent. End result was pathway to Mayo's ER, notifying their social workers over there. Gentleman's on his way. He self-presents, and he's willing to go for a 72-hour stay without any really further. And some of the terms escape me. Chris, you probably jump in and tell the exact terms. But the end result was the gentleman was very willing to go over to Eau Claire and receive some additional support and assistance. He moved right from there seamlessly to the Veterans Housing and Recovery Program, which some people refer to as Client Hall over in Chippewa Falls. And the gentleman's doing well. We followed up with them. So it's great partnership to have that crisis folks right on ground. Another community partnership, the Remax Realtors. They'd contact as a veteran, Tim Nelson, his name and his partnership with the title company. The last 2 years they've done some direct donations. They look for us to identify some veterans in need, and we're able to use some of their generosity to help with some rent for a few veterans, and they definitely, at this time of year, it's definitely needed. So it's good to have those partnership, and our commitment is always to make sure it's used in the best manner and most appropriate for community members. The last impact statement is just emphasizing detail. It's easy to come to work and just do your job, but then there's a next level when you're looking at details that are embedded within an individual's file. And so what part of our responsibility is not miss those details, because it can impact a family. This is I mentioned Blue Water Navy and now the impact of that being approved. This is a direct result of staff being able to see a death certificate and then knowing and looking at the cause of that death, and then taking another step as they're closing out some files to see that, hey, this veteran served off the coastal waters of Vietnam, and now the end result is this surviving spouse has ongoing monthly benefits due to the loss of her husband, his service in right off the coastal waters of Vietnam, and she'll also qualify for Wisconsin property tax credit. So that's things that are important, and not miss those details in our daily work and overlook that. Any questions about any of the impact statements? Okay, thank you. Now I'll just move to my financial report. Nothing significant with that, other than I already mentioned there'll be a carry forward. Our request will be coming forward to the Human Services for an action item next month. And that will conclude my report unless there's any specific questions.
Excellent report, Greg. Any questions for Greg? Yes, Supervisor Bjork.
I don't have a question, but I just want to commend and thank Greg on the individual that appeared suicidal and following through after the 72 hours and see how he lands on his feet. And tremendous effort. I sure appreciate the good work.
Yeah, I think we would all echo that, Greg, and thank you for the excellent report. Anything else before we move on? All right, moving on to the Public Health Department report. KT.
Wonderful. So I did send out my report just earlier today so that you guys would have most updated numbers. You'll see that the graphic that I sent in the body of the email does have today's numbers because our public health educator has been pulled into COVID vaccinations. She's doing some of our screening. It was not able to update our infographic that we put up Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for you today. So the numbers that you had in the body with just over 4,000 cases, 4,007 here in Dunn County is accurate. And so that's something to be aware of, because what you have in your packet was updated yesterday and we were just under, I would say, that important threshold. So if it's helpful, I would like to share my screen real quick.
Please.
So that we can just all look at this together. So as we already talked about, slightly different day versus yesterday, but the trends are pretty, are the same. So we are continuing to be at a very high, which is greater than 25 cases per 100,000 people per day. You guys will remember that last time we spoke, we were critically high, and that equated to 70 cases per 100,000 people. And so definitely a reduction, but still more than we would like to see, of course. So just as I kind of move through that, you have a couple other things that we've started adding to our regular social media updates, including vaccination. Again, this data is 1 day old, and what we are seeing is that the state has pushed really hard to get people to report into the Wisconsin Immunization Registry, or WIR, daily. And I don't know how successful they're being. We have real-time reporting with our electronic medical records system. Nightingale Notes is connected to WIR. So everything that we dose or deliver goes immediately and is then counted 2 days later. And so right now, Wisconsin is looking at a total, I'm sorry, let me start with Dunn County. So Dunn County has 2,181 doses in Dunn County residents. And for a total for the state of Wisconsin, we're at 426,411. So that just is, 1 day difference. So we are really picking up on vaccination, bringing on additional vaccinators, and moving through some of the required backstock of vaccine before vaccinators receive additional doses. So I think that that's helpful to have some awareness of just that difference that 1 day will make. I would encourage you guys to take a peek at the Senate bill. It's not a bill, I'm sorry, but there is a move to override the emergency order, and that has 2 impacts that you should have awareness around. There is an impact potentially to schools. One of the things the CDC requires is that schools, in order to stay open or make the recommendation for them to stay open, is they have to have strong adherence to cloth face coverings. And without the state order to wear masks, that will be a larger challenge for superintendents to enforce. The other thing is that when there is a state declaration of emergency, a public health emergency, that opens up dollars for us here locally, both through FEMA and some of the other federal dollars for isolation and quarantine. And so we've talked about that before. If somebody is a close contact to a positive and they live with somebody who's high risk, we provide housing and pay for that out of some neutral grant through federal dollars. That will go away as soon as the public health emergency is discontinued, and that will come out of probably other COVID funds as allowed, if allowed, or levy dollars, since we are required by statute to do it. And then you've just got some additional numbers to follow up on. So more information about vaccine. I imagine that you guys probably have some questions about vaccination, and so I wanted to put this in your hands so that you could reference it. And then like previous updates, you have information on hospitals. We are seeing and we are grateful that we are seeing a reduction in that incredible overwhelmedness in November of our hospital systems. And now we have quite a bit of breathing room, and I'm hopeful that we will stay that way. And then you have infographic from the Hospital Association, just another format to look at similar data, and our case activity. What you also have in your email is the weekly regional update. And I sent this to you as a PDF. A lot of the data is redundant, and I apologize for that bit. But because I sent it to you as a PDF, you also have active links to some really good information, both from Wisconsin and the CDC about a variety of different topics. And so I wanted to make sure that you saw these are all live, and you're able to, at your convenience, peruse them to better bring yourself up to date from a reliable source. Any questions on any of that?
Any questions for KT? Chairman Bartlett.
Couple of questions. One, when you were talking about the amount of people vaccinated, is that with the second shot or just the first shot?
Sure. I'm going to share a different screen. I have 3. It tends to get a little messy. All right. Okay, so this is the state's website. So this is where I was reading off of the doses administered. And so you guys will remember that 426,000 number. Dunn County is a little over 2,000. And that's where I'm pulling those numbers. Those are both first and second doses broken down by Moderna and Pfizer. You guys, I believe you understand that we do have Pfizer vaccine, which creates some challenges, but it's better than no vaccine.
All right.
And so these are our secondary, I'm sorry, our Wisconsin residents who have completed the series. So we have about 83,000 Wisconsinites have gotten 2 doses of either Moderna or Pfizer. We have asked the state to break this down by county, and at this point they have not chosen to do so. My expectation is they want to make sure that people's private health history is private, and they want to make sure that they can de-identify all counties sufficiently.
All right, and then the other comment is, I did not look at your email before the meeting. I didn't think about that. And what you just had on the screen was kind of small print in some places. So is there some place on your website that tells people where they can go or what they can do? Because that county board, I believe it might have been Larry, but somebody asked if we would get that on the website someplace to help people with instructions on where to go to get, because they all seem to be doing it different.
And I appreciate that. So our website does have some information on how in general to navigate becoming vaccinated if you are 1A eligible. So that's healthcare workers, people that live or work in long-term care facilities, our folks that are 65 or better. So 1B, the couple areas of 1B that are open, 65 or better, law enforcement, first responders. I think that we have areas of opportunity with that, because you're absolutely right, Chairperson Bartlett. Each healthcare system is a little different and it can be challenging. And so Chris Corpola's team and I are working together, the ADRC and the health department, to really reach out directly to some of our most vulnerable 65 and better folks that may not have the same access and may experience barriers differently, so that we can support them in their efforts to be vaccinated if they care to. Mayo is doing Mayo's thing, and they are reaching out to their people individually. So there's no way for us to support that, but we can support that with other health systems like Prevea Marshfield that do take out of network folks and do have online capacity for that. At the health department, we are not vaccinating based on age eligibility. We are still working through 1A and job description 1B eligible folks.
Thank you.
Other questions for KT, particularly about vaccinations? The supply the supply chain is improving, I take it?
I don't know that I would go that far. So we were notified today during our state health officer meeting that only 27% of the requests for a vaccine were filled for this upcoming week. That has a lot to do with having to hold back second doses. And you guys will remember about 3 to 4 weeks ago, we started really pushing hard to get our healthcare folks vaccinated. And we're bringing on more vaccinators. So, we have 7 that are through the process here in Dunn County. 2 of them we're planning on getting vaccine for the first time this upcoming week. And so as we bring on more vaccine and more vaccinators, and we have flat vaccine and additional need for second vaccinations, there is less to put in the existing vaccinators' hands. Add to that, the federal allocation literally comes out the Friday before we vaccinate on Monday. We don't know how much we're going to get until somewhere between Friday and Sunday. And then we verify with folks that their appointment is held. So incredible challenges with vaccine supply, challenges with the ancillary equipment, the syringes, some of the other things that you need to get shots into arms. And we haven't seen, the state is working to remedy that. And so we have not seen challenges in that way, but other counties have. We did receive less vaccine than we wanted this week rather, and we are on notice that we may not receive any vaccine next week.
Supervisor Bjork.
Mayo is my primary medical provider and a cardiologist, and I don't have any confidence at all that I'm going to be contacted by computer, because I'm not on the computer maybe 3 different times during the week. Telephone calls to the residents and not the cell phone. And I, hit the 65 plus and other health stuff. I would like to have a little confidence in the county health department in providing services for vaccinations for people such as myself.
So I absolutely appreciate that. Your portal can be set up so that you get, and like you shared, that it goes to your landline instead of your cell phone. We also doctor with Mayo, and anytime there's something in my portal for me or my kiddos or my husband, I get a text. And so it reminds me to go look at that. That's something that we can help you navigate if you would like some help with that, or we can lean into our partners at ADRC to help navigate that. I realize that it's a challenge, and that's one of the reasons that Lonnie Dodge from ADRC and I have been in close communication and will continue planning to support folks that don't spend a lot of time on the computer or have no care to. We see that that is also an issue.
Supervisor Kennedy.
Well, I have a question. If you don't have a portal, or there's something, it's not working correctly, how do they contact you, or don't they?
So I don't work for Mayo, so let me just start there. I understand that they do have technical support to get you set up via phone for a portal. And if you have any issues, you can call them and work through that. I think it's one of the options on one of the main lines that I know that I have used as I was frantically waiting for my online visit, not getting things to load right. So I do know that there is some support in that capacity.
Thank you.
Supervisor Steen.
Yeah, Sarah, I just talked to Mayo today, and I also went through my portal today. And Mayo is going to contact you by computer or will call you. That's what they told me. That's the best, and I just did it about 3 o'clock, so most up-to-date stuff I got.
Actually, on their website or through my portal, it says that your existing patient online services account or by mail. And then it also says email.
Yeah.
Thank you, all of you.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, KT. Do we also have a financial report? I'm sorry, I'm foreclosing you, so go ahead.
So I just wanted to share one quick thing in the report as well, is that we have been notified in writing. I don't have it in a contract yet, but notified in writing, so that's a good step, that we will receive some federal pass-through dollars to support vaccinations specifically to the tune of a little over $400,000. Again, we don't have it in hand. I don't have it in a contract, but we are signaling to you that we will get it and we will be able to hire vaccinators in a way that meets the community need more so than we have right now. That was the one thing I wanted to add. Thank you.
Anything else? And do we have a financial report this month?
We do. It's also in the email that I sent, and Sarah Stabenow is going to help us wrap our heads around it. Do you want me to pull that up on the screen?
Please.
Okay.
Thanks, Katie. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, Sarah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Katie. You're on the expense tab. If you'll roll down to line 99, please. Oh, there you go. Thanks. I just want to show everyone the year-to-date expense there in the green under column D. See the 1,609,140. That would be the grand total expense for public health to date. I have been in contact with Katie and Sophia, the one that prepares the financials, and right now this is our best estimate that these is the total expenses for 2020. There's a few bills outstanding, but nothing substantial left out there to pay. So that would be the total expenses. Katie, if you'll flip to the revenue page for me, please. In column E or G, you can see it's $1,521,978.11. This is the total revenue to date that we have received in to the books. This shows an outstanding roughly about $98,000 yet to come in, and these are 98,000 to 100,000 coming from the state in CARS payments. So when you add that to this, it looks like, and this is just an estimate right now, so I want to put that out there, that the public health department will be returning roughly about $12,000 back to the general fund. Is there any questions on that?
Any questions either for Sarah or for KT on the budget? All right, moving on. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Unless there are any additional questions for the health department, we will move on to the Department of Human Services.
All right, I will be very quick. I did a written report to you, a little update on some work that we're spearheading regionally to look at renewing legislation for to add funding for development of mental health bed space. And Senator Bernier from the east of us is strongly working on that project and has strong support from Senator Steph Schultz as well. And then we've talked well about the CDBG grant. Just my note to, if you know anyone who would be interested in driving for home delivered meals, you can drive a day a month, you can drive a week a month, you can drive every day if you want to. It is totally a volunteer program for that meal delivery. And we are running 3 routes right now. North, central, and southern part of the counties, and the need continues to grow. So those of you who are part of the ADRC advisory committee know that Bernie Allen, our nutrition coordinator, reported last week that pre-COVID we were serving about 90 home delivered meals a day, and we're at about 150 now. and continue to receive requests on a regular basis. So, so anyway, it's mostly just a plea that if you know anyone who would be interested in driving, and if you saw our little segment on
very nice.
WQOW, that was cool.
Yeah, that was very nice. It's nice to see you get some credit for all the hard work.
And Jody had a question.
Yes, that was an awesome segment, and I'm glad your team received recognition. Can I just ask a quick question? How long are the voluntary shifts? Are they an hour, 2 hours of driving?
They're about maybe a little under 2. Most of the time, I think they start around 10:30, and they're easily done by 1 o'clock.
Okay.
That's all I've got out of that. The rest of it's just in the written report, and then Sarah will do the financial piece.
Are we ready for Sarah?
Probably should have unmuted myself before I took control, right? Sorry about that. Can you guys all see my screen okay? All right, great. I just have the summary up, and that was probably provided to you within the board packet and stuff, so I'll just show it. So if nobody printed it out, it's up on the screen. The grand total of expenses projected right now, there's a few more miscellaneous bills for December coming in. Chris and I did the best we could to make sure we had everything in here. I've gotten some notice from some of my staff that they paid some more December bills. So this will be what I want to say your first December financial. So the grand total of expenses that we're projecting right now for 2020 is $14,056,441. The next 2 lines are broken out into DHS operating and salaries. So the operating expense is $9,007,113. The salaries for staff are $5,049,328. That balance checks back to the $14,056,441. And then it again checks for the expenses and the revenue that DHS has brought in. This is state grants, this is billing revenue, other donations and services that we've billed for and come back in to the department. That totals $10,544,538. And with that being said, it looks like DHS will use $3,511,903 of county levy dollars. That's of the $4,096,708 that was budgeted. So with all of that being said, once I do all the calculations right now, and this is still not carved in stone, so it looks like DHS will get back $584,805. Do you have any questions?
Will you be able to have finals for 2020 at our February meeting?
We're going to try. Yeah, we're going to try. We still have some AR, which is accounts receivable money that comes in, and we try to book the receivable and final them out by the next month. But it's still not the fully audited part. But yes, we should be pretty close next month. Thank you.
Questions of Sarah? Supervisor Steen, any questions? I pick on you, don't I? I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Sarah, you're our girl. Keep it up.
All right. Thanks, Gary.
Supervisor Bjork.
I don't know if this is the right time or not, but I'm looking at the printouts of the payouts or the POs or whatever you call them. If I have
the vouchers
about vouchers, when do I ask those questions?
Well, that's our first action item, and it would be our next item.
Thank you.
Anything else on 2020 budget figures? Okay. All right, and then we are moving on. Since we did not meet in December, we have 2 months of reviews of the vouchers paid. For November in the amount of $359,424. For December in the amount of $739,585. I'll take a single motion to note review of the vouchers paid for both November and December?
This is Bill. I'll so move.
All right, thank you, Bill. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Supervisor Steen seconds. Discussion here. Supervisor Bjork, you have a question.
Well, I don't want to appear to be just cranky, but it makes me cranky when I don't understand where the money goes. And when I look in December, it's 15 pages of vouchers. And I keep wondering and asking myself, House Calls of Menominee Incorporated, they had 321 payouts. I don't know how many dollars that is. I don't know what they do. I don't know if you went to every 10th one and said, this is what we did. I would know more. The payouts in November was 153 to House Calls of Menominee. I one time had some information on their board of directors, but I don't know what they do. And I don't know if the county is being paid, is paying for items as they should. Can anybody at the meeting today go to any one of the 321 in December or 153 in November and say what that dollar amount paid for? I'm just asking. You're asking me to basically approve this, and I have no information to draw a conclusion.
So, so the simple answer to your question is yes. The partial solution to your question, although I say only partial because you have to make some assumptions. So this information gets printed right out of our financial system. So that's why it looks like it looks, and that's why there's truncated information. Almost all, if not all of those house calls particularly, if you look in the center column where it says cost element name, gives you some partial description. So almost all of those house calls expenses fall into one of two categories. They're either agency contract salary or their agency contract travel. And they represent all of the leased staff that we have that are employed through house calls as the employer on record, but work for through the Department of Human Services. So house calls, our house calls contract is a very, very large contract. It's almost $2 million. It represents, I believe, almost 40 staff in our agency. And so line by line, that's why there's so many of them, because the system picks them up and just prints them out line by line. It would tell you that in November, if I'm just looking, let me just make sure I'm looking at November's, starting at on the very first page of the very first house calls line, it would tell you that staff in the CCS program received $2,609.09 in salary, a salary payment in that month.
Well, I assumed that looking through it, and then I started looking at numbers that were the same and how often they repeated themselves. And I assumed that, it was staff payment. I can see where it says salary and see where it says travel. And
so the reason that they repeat themselves in many cases, so some of those staff are hourly staff, and that changes a little bit, depending on the amount of time that they worked. But several of those staff are salaried staff. So it's essentially their annual, just like the county staff their annual pay divided by the number of pay periods in the year, 26 pay periods in the year. And so they just get paid the same amount every single payroll.
Question?
Supervisor Bjork, I take that that's not answering your question.
No,
Go
I
ahead.
just have another question. Are we hiring supervisors to oversee their staff, or does the county oversee?
So our county management staff oversee the leased staff. So the way that we split that out is we say the house calls is responsible for all of their personnel management. They process all of their payroll information, they provide their insurance, they provide sort of the day-to-day financial side of that, and we provide their program supervision. So they're most of them are co-located with our staff in our agency, and they receive their day-to-day sort of marching orders from county management staff.
Yes, go ahead, please, Supervisor Bjork.
Well, at one piece of information on house calls in Wisconsin, which I've been, questioning for all the years that I've been here, and I can say all the years now because it's been more than 2. I noticed that they had a board of directors, and I recognize, some of the people in the board of directors and very reputable folks that I recognized. But what's their business model? Are they a sole proprietorship? Are they what are they? And is there an owner of the company, or what are they?
They are a nonprofit or not-for-profit organization, and they have an executive director, and then they have a board of directors, as you indicated, and they really do 3 things. They have so a little bit of it's, if I can bore you 3 minutes with a little bit of history information. So prior to 2008, which I realize is going back a bit, but prior to 2008, the county was responsible for determining eligibility for people to receive publicly funded long-term care. If you were an older person or you were an adult disabled person and you couldn't afford to receive the services that you needed to maintain you in the community or in a placement setting other than a nursing home. So if you needed to live in assisted living, if you needed to live in a group home or an adult family home and you couldn't afford those, we did the eligibility determination, which looked at your financial information and your functional eligibility. So that just means, could you bathe yourself? Could you brush your own teeth? Could you do your own laundry? Could you make your own meals? Although that's called functional eligibility. So we looked at all of that as an organization, and we provided all those services. So we had large contracts with 2 lease organizations, one being House Calls, the other being a business that's gone out of business by the name of Gemini Employee Leasing. And they employed all of those care providers that the county needed, and there were literally hundreds of them, that the county needed to provide those services to people. When the state took that over, in the terms of now we do the eligibility determination, but we don't provide the services. Those services are provided like through those managed care organizations like Inclusa or Care Wisconsin or Wisconsin Cares. There's a number of them. When this state took that over, that's ultimately, that kind of drove Gemini out of business because they didn't have those large contracts for that anymore. But House Calls kind of shifted gears, and they moved into more classic, what's called employee leasing. So it's almost like a temp agency, except that the staff stay in a position. They're not just temporary staff. They're hired and they stay, and the lease organization handles all of that payroll responsibility. Where that started in Dunn County was it was a number of people a number of positions or job duties. Oftentimes they were grant funded situations where we weren't certain of the funding going forward. So you would hire them as a lease staff. And then if the funding continued, they continue. If it didn't, it would end. Over time, it evolved to be significantly less expensive. And we had this conversation a couple of times. We've had it also in the Committee on Administration as well. Over time, it was significantly cheaper to hire somebody through a leased organization. And because you weren't paying for, in large part, Wisconsin retirement system and an expensive health insurance plan. The leased staff do receive insurance. They do have a retirement plan. They do have a paid time off program. And then they are compensated comparably to county staff, but it is a different package. Over time, that really grew as we added more and more staff, and we're urged to do as much as we could with the limited amount of money that we've had increases. And so our leased staff numbers have grown dramatically to now almost a 50-50 in our organization. Not quite, but almost. And then, so anyone who does business with us as a county then has to, if you do more than $100,000 of business, then you have to have an official annual audit. So they're audited and it looks at your financial stability and whatever. So they have that responsibility. Oh, I lost my train of thought. Let me just say one thing. So they do that. They have a segment of their work that is employee leasing. Then they have a segment of their work in which they have people who are called corporate guardians. They are people who are paid to provide guardianship services to people who don't have someone else to be in that role in their life. And then they also have a portion of their business which are called representative payees. So if I receive a Social Security, like a Social Security disability or an SSI benefit, and I'm not able to manage that money myself, the court can appoint a representative payee, and House Calls fulfills that responsibility. And then out of my whatever I receive, they take a small portion of that every month. It used to be $35. I don't know how much it is now, but $35 a month out of my proceeds to manage my money for me for that month. So House Calls does those three things: leasing, guardianships, and representative payee services.
Go ahead, Supervisor Bjork.
Are they, their staff that goes out and visits Dunn County residents that Dunn County then reimburses them for, what type of requirements do they have for certifications as if they would have been a county employee? I mean, are they, I mean, I don't.
Yep. They're the same.
Ask what I mean.
They're the same. They're the same. So if we say that they're going to, we ask them to hire a social worker on our behalf, they would have the same qualifications as if someone were employed through the county, because there's certain things that you have to have in place in order to call yourself a social worker, and they have to have those. If they hire a therapist, they would have the same qualifications as a therapist. Essentially, we have a great working relationship with them. And so we work hand in hand to, you know, both not only to develop the job descriptions, but also the, to, you know, to be a part of the having a, we are a part of the hiring process in the sense of that we get to sit in on the interviews and weigh in on their hiring decision. On the flip side of it, if it comes to disciplinary matter, they come in and they work side by side with our staff to manage, disciplinary issues. Up to and including termination, and there have been some terminations, but we have county terminations as well occasionally, so it's not related to the quality of the service that they're providing. It's related to the people that are hired to do that job that aren't able for whatever reason to do that well.
Supervisor Steen, you had your hand up.
I got two questions there, Chris. I see we got a commitment to Tremplo down there. Am I correct?
We have some people at Trempealeau County Healthcare. Yep.
And about how many have you had there this year?
Oh, I don't know. I honestly don't know off the top of my head. I only know that right now we have 6 people in placement, but I don't know how many that we've had there. Under a dozen, more than 5, under a dozen.
Thank you.
It's Supervisor Bjork.
Relating back to Gary at Trempealeau County, isn't that exactly what we're talking about with the bed space that Senator Bruner is talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe we'll put some of these items on our ongoing professional development as a board so we can explore some of these questions in more detail. But we do have a motion and a second on the floor to note review of the vouchers, the DHS vouchers paid for November and December. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Vouchers are reviewed. Second action item we have is, it was in your packet, a resolution to adopt a citizen participation plan for the proposed CDBG CV grant, noting here that this board will constitute the citizen, will serve in the capacity of the citizen participation board and with public hearings and input. So moved from Supervisor Steen. Is there a second?
I second it.
Bonnie Barker is the second. Any questions? Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the resolution to adopt a citizen participation plan has passed. And finally, we have a resolution authorizing submission of the grant application that will be forwarded to the county board on its February 17th meeting. You see the resolution before you in your packet, including background information that Chris covered very well in her introduction today. I need a motion.
I make a motion.
Bonnie Barker moves. Is there a second?
I second.
Supervisor Steen is the second. Any discussion? All in favor of sending this on to the county board, please signify by
Aye.
Aye.
any opposed? That passes. And that is our agenda for the day, unless there are announcements. Yes, Supervisor Kennedy. You're muted, Sarah. Sarah.
You're muted, Sarah.
Okay, a few years ago, not everybody that's here on the board now was on the county board a few years ago, but, and this is mainly for Gary that I'm bringing this up, Gary Steen, who has always asked me for Kringle, because one year I brought Kringle for the whole county board from Kenosha, had it shipped up here from Kenosha. And he's bugged me about it ever since. But I just wanted to tell him and everybody else that the excellent bakery was called Oliver's, or is called Oliver's, in Kenosha, was having a lot of financial problems, like a lot of other businesses in Kenosha and everywhere else. And so the owner of the company, of the bakery, let it be known, you know, that she was having financial difficulties and she didn't want to have to lay people off and all this kind of stuff. So I just read it in the paper, or in the Kenosha stuff that I get, that she got up one morning, went to her bakery, and every block for anywhere near here had customers waiting to buy her bakery. And they bought so much bakery that she actually started doing much better. So I just thought Gary would like to hear that. Kenosha is a bigger city. They've had a lot of trouble this year, but I think the fact that they would all back up one bakery, says a lot about the people there. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that story. Anything else? Other announcements? Thank you all. We will see you on February 25th, Thursday at 5:30. We are adjourned without objection.